Hey everyone, it's Jeff Young, kinesiologist, and this video is on how resistance training sets are terminated. It's known as set endpoints. And the reason why it's important to know is because it'll help you differentiate between muscle failure and repetition maximum, which a lot of people confuse and think that they actually mean the same thing, but they don't. And also the different ways you can terminate a set when you're training submax. Primarily the difference between a warm up and a working set. While this may seem like too simple of information for you to know on the surface, truth is there are so many people who go to the gym, and actually a ton of trainers as well, who are either terminating sets or having their clients terminate sets prior to the sets actually becoming true working sets. And so because of that, it's important for you to understand the different ways a set can be terminated. So let's go ahead and dive into it. When performing a resistance training set, at some point the set needs to be terminated since you can't keep performing repetitions forever. There are 6 ways a set can be terminated. The termination of a set is also known as repetition cessation or set endpoint. This information is pretty simple, but extremely important for anyone who engages in or prescribes strength training to understand, because too many gym goers terminate sets before the set has actually become a true working set. The first thing to know is that resistance training sets can be broken down into 2 categories. Either the set was a warm up or the set was a true working set. Please refer to my video on the RPE method for more detailed information on how to differentiate between the two. These 2 categories can be further broken down into subcategories. The set either was taken to the point of fatigue, where no additional repetitions could have been performed without breaking form, or the lifter terminated the set knowing they could have performed additional repetitions but chose not to. These types of sets are known as non-repetition maximum sets, meaning the maximum number of repetitions possible weren't performed. So beginning with non-repetition maximum sets. A non-repetition maximum warm-up, which is what too many lifters perform thinking it was actually a working set, is where the set is terminated when the lifter completes a predetermined number of repetitions, even though further reps could have been completed, where the last rep of the set wasn't in close enough proximity to repetition maximum to elicit an adaptation. In this type of set, the load that was being lifted and during the repetitions that were performed never caused a significant slowing of the speed or velocity of movement. The speed of every repetition looked the same as every rep that preceded it. Next is a non-repetition maximum working set. This is similar to a non-repetition maximum warm-up in the sense that the prescribed number of repetitions was completed even though further reps could have been performed. But in this case, the last rep of the set was in close enough proximity to repetition maximum to elicit one or more adaptations. The difference here is that the speed or velocity of movement did begin to significantly slow when the lifter decided to terminate the set. It just hadn't slowed to the point where no more reps could have been performed. Next on the list is self-determined repetition maximum. This is when the lifter predicts that if they attempted another repetition, they would reach muscle failure. In this case, the set was a true working set. The accumulation of fatigue caused the velocity of movement to significantly slow, almost to a stop, and the set was considered to be very hard. The only difference between this type of set and the next on the list is that since it's a prediction, the lifter could be right or they could be wrong. It needs to be included on the list because there are many studies that show people will miscalculate how many repetitions they could actually perform before reaching repetition maximum, where they think they reached the end of the set because of fatigue. But the truth is, if their life depended on it, they could have actually performed another rep without having to break form. Next is a true repetition maximum, which is defined as the lifter completing the final rep possible, where if another rep was attempted, they would have definitely reached muscle failure. Here's an example. Muscle failure is closely related to repetition maximum, and many people think they mean the same thing, even though there is a slight difference. With muscle failure, the person reached repetition maximum, meaning they did complete the lifting portion of the movement despite significant fatigue and slowing of the velocity of movement, and they decided to attempt another repetition anyway, but weren't able to complete the lifting portion. Here's an example of muscle failure. The only difference between repetition maximum and muscle failure is the failed attempt to perform another repetition at the end of a set. And finally, we have something called momentary muscle failure plus advanced techniques. This just refers to the fact that you can reach repetition maximum or muscle failure and then either quickly lighten the load, such as when performing drop sets, or wait a handful of seconds to allow some of the fatigue to dissipate, known as a rest pause set. Or have someone help you lift the weight, which is known as an assisted repetition. The only benefits to these types of sets are that they improve local muscle endurance and possibly help increase lean muscle tissue. So those are the definitions of the 6 set endpoints, or ways that someone can terminate a resistance training set. In most cases, lifters don't need to implement advanced techniques, and they don't need to regularly train to muscle failure or repetition maximum. For general and special populations, most sets should be sub-max in intensity and fall within the non-repetition maximum working set domain. Taking sets to repetition maximum or muscle failure on occasion is important because it's extremely hard to accurately judge what sub-max sets feel like unless you truly understand what maximal effort feels like. In other words, it's hard to judge what a 7, 8, or 9 feels like on a scale of 1 to 10 unless you truly know what a 10 feels like. But otherwise, maximal effort sets increase the risk for joint pain and central nervous system burnout and don't need to be a regular part of the program, which is one of the great things about strength training. Sets can and should mostly be sub-max, and as long as they are true working sets and the velocity of movement significantly slowed toward the end of the set, you'll reap the benefits for years on end. So now you should have a better understanding of resistance training terminology and more specifically, how a set can be terminated. And then hopefully you also understand a little bit better the difference between warm-ups and a true working set and the difference between repetition maximum and muscle failure, and that they don't actually mean the exact same thing. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.